know. But there are people who would love to know about your work and passion that you have been following. MD, PhD, MARR, is a medical doctor trained at Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and he is a PhD in neuroscience and Harvard University, and a globally recognized Vedic scholar. As Maharishi Mahesh Yogi's successor, Dr. Nader is head of the International Transcendental Meditation organizations in over 100 countries and president for Maharishi International University's work. Author of many famous books, notably Human Physiology, Expression of Veda, and the Vedic Literature and Ramayana in Human Physiology. We welcome you, sir.
Namaste. It's a great joy and an honor to participate with such a great assembly of leaders who are caring for world peace, and to thank the government of India, Shri Modi ji, and all the leaders of India, and particularly, of course, the great Minister of Education, Shri Pokoju ji, and all the organizers that have participated, Dr. Raja Luis and everyone else, and the leaders in the world. Veda is a term in Sanskrit that means knowledge. And some of the aspects that I will cover maybe are well known to a lot of the great scholars that we have, but I'd like to share with you today Maharishi's perspective, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, who comes from the Vedic tradition, who has been trained under the leadership and instructions and guidance by the holy teachers in India, particularly, of course, his master, his beloved master that we call Gurudev, Swami Brahmananda Saraswati, who was the Jagat Guru of Jyotirmat, the Shankaracharya at that time, and who was illustrious in the knowledge, and who asked Maharishi to go to the world and spread the knowledge that is missing to create happiness and world peace. Maharishi explains that the reality of life is ananda, is bliss, and is shanti, it's peace. But people are not living that, and therefore he felt to go out, and we were lucky in the West that the Himalayan knowledge and heights came to us to give us this very profound knowledge of living, of wholeness of life, of perfect health, and understanding how we can create peace. In the Veda, as we know, it is said that we all come from bliss, we all move in bliss, and to bliss we come back, because that is the nature of life. Ananda dhyeva kalvimani bhutani jayanti, anandena jatani jivanti, anandam advisham priyantiti. So even though I got a little mixed up at the end, it's the thought of all of you and the reality of life moving in that direction with this great assembly. So this knowledge, Veda is knowledge. And what is the knowledge? How Maharishi really explained that knowledge. He showed that knowledge that is in the Veda is also scientific knowledge. However, how do we get knowledge? Where do we get knowledge? Usually we get knowledge from observation through the senses. You know, you see a seed that you put in the ground, and you see how the seed grows and develops into a flower or a tree, and then it becomes a fruit. So you know that the seed becomes the tree, and the tree produces more seeds, and that continues. Of course, we observe all kinds of knowledge on the objective level. Through our senses, we see things, we experience things. And then we want to understand how these manifestations happen. What makes the seed become a tree? Which means, what are the laws of nature that work together to transform a little piece of something, a seed, into a huge tree, and how the seed takes the nourishment from the earth. And then we go into details about its molecules and how they interact with each other and how they develop based on different forces. Deeper than the molecular chemical level, we have the physical forces, the forces of physics, how atoms, how elementary particles interact with each other. And as we study the laws of nature, we start to understand how life works, how things work. And we want to expand this to all areas of life. We want to know what is about health, what is about our mind, about feelings, how the universe works, and what is the relationship, where does it come from. And all of this leads us to our thinking, our intellectual analysis. So from observation on the sensory level, we get to intellectual analysis on the mental level that sometimes gives us things that are actually different than what we observe. For example, you see the sun moving in the sky from east to west, and you say the sun moves in the sky from east to west. It took human knowledge many years, hundreds of years, to understand that it's actually the Earth rotating around its axis that leads to this feeling or illusion, if you like, in a sense, that it's actually the sun moving in the sky. Still, it is knowledge. It is knowledge at the sensory level, and the other knowledge is more profound. It is on an intellectual understanding level. Now, when the observations on the surface fail to fit together in a proper way, scientists use more of their intelligence. So we go to the intellect, but even deeper to the intuition level. Something makes the scientist feel, based on the analysis of what they have, that things should work like this. It would make sense that things work like this. This is how, for example, Einstein discovered or said that, there is relativity in time and space. Although on the observation level, nobody doubts that there is actually time is very rigid, it's very specific, distances are very specific, and therefore there is no sense of possible relativity in that sense. However, the data didn't fit. And it's the human consciousness, the human intelligence that was able to resolve these aspects of understanding and find that even our observation on the surface level might be mistaken. The observation might be mistaken, leading to true understanding on the level of consciousness, on the level of thinking, of human mind, of human intellect. And this way, we find that there is a deeper level in consciousness that can reveal realities that at the observation level can be contradictory. So that, for example, the relativity of time and space, the fact that the laws of nature are the same for all observers that are not accelerating, that is the special theory of relativity. And then in the grand scheme of the general relativity, we have the reality that there is a space-time continuum, and even gravity is a geometric structure that takes us to understandings and things that are beyond the imagination of the surface level of observation. And then we have quantum mechanics that came along that showed us that actually what we feel is local, is right here and right now, and the sense of time is all as if universal. We find that there are non-locality, that objects are actually not located in time and space until you observe them, and that baffles the scientist, and you get into what is called the weirdness of the discoveries in modern science. So modern science on the objective level is trying to understand the universe and its laws from its own perspective. What is Veda then? Where does Veda come from? Veda doesn't come from objective analysis of the observation. It comes from direct experience of the rishis within themselves. So Veda is a science that we can say is subjective. It comes from the inner experience and the level of consciousness. It is the same as when a scientist says that the universe should be relative in terms of time and distances and all of that, that things are non-local, even though it contradicts the senses, but there is something deeper than that. So what does Veda say in its science? It actually says that the universe comes out of one field, and that is the field of pure being, pure consciousness. So there is one field, that's what Veda says and has said for thousands of years, that the rishis of the Veda discovered, that there is one field which is the source of all that there is. And that is beautifully explained in one great aspect of the Veda, which is Vedanta, which is in terms of what Vedanta means. Anta is the end, and Vedanta is the end of the Veda, but not the end in terms of finishing or termination, but the end in terms of the highest value, the ultimate realization. So what is the ultimate realization of understanding of our reality? Is that all is one field of consciousness that manifests itself in different aspects. And that's why the Veda says, Aham Brahmasmi, I am totality. Vedoham, I am the Veda. Tattvamasi, thou art that. Sarvam Kalvidam Brahm, everything is totality, everything is wholeness. Now, this is an expression in the Vedic science that comes from inner introspection and understanding. It has very profound implications that we will get into briefly. But let's first ask ourselves, does it make sense? Because the objective level of understanding, the modern science, is studying the universe, it's studying the world. And there are laws that we know, and there are structures that we know, and they are relationship of cause and effect that we have discovered scientifically, and they are rigid and they are there. There is law and order in the unfoldment of the forces of nature, so that you can predict even the future of what is happening and all of that, because you know the laws that lead to that. What modern science has discovered is, as you go deeper and deeper into trying to find where is this coming from, what is the origin of objects. For example, objects are made out of molecules, molecules are made out of atoms, atoms are made out of elementary particles, elementary particles have been found to be fields of energy. These fields of energy are of different nature. On the surface level, you have electricity, magnetism, weak forces, strong forces, gravitational forces. But as you go deeper, as scientists kept going deeper, they found that actually all these fields are more and more unified. Until today, we have a theory of a unified field of all the laws of nature. And this is not just conjecture, you know. Nobel Prize in physics have been given to those who have unified, you know, electromagnetism and the weak force and like that, and those who are unifying these fields. So this is a very serious, hardcore science. Therefore, science is leading us to the same conclusion, that there is one unified field that is the source of everything. Now, Maharishi has said these two are the same. And he went on to say, on a theoretical basis, we can now understand what the Veda says, that everything is that unified field, Sat Chit Ananda, the field of purity, pure bliss, pure wholeness. That is the field of pure consciousness, pure being. And that field is within us, of course. Where else would it be? It is within everything. When we say Yatha Pinde Tatha Brahmande, that means every atom is like the universe. The universe has within it the structure of every atom. What does it mean? It means that the source and course of everything comes from that unified field. What is beautiful in the human reality is that we can access that field. We can directly access that field through direct experience, and that is what transcending is, transcendental meditation. Now, we spoke about Veda as a science, but also, as Dr. Rajalvi said, it's also a technology. It's also a means. So Veda has knowledge, and in this knowledge, there is a technology. One of the primary aspects of the technology of the Veda is yoga. There are 40 branches of the Veda that Maharishi organized and structured as a perfect science. They deal with all aspects of reality. The environment, the individual, the inner, the outer, the development, the change, how the seed becomes, the sap becomes the flower, becomes the tree. That unified value is even there expressed on the surface level, but also there is a science of the Veda and technology of the Veda about health, about our relation to the herbs, as in Ayurveda, about the structure of homes, how to build our cities in Sthapatya Veda. We have all the knowledge about how things express themselves, transform themselves, they expand, they go back to the self, how we measure and quantify. And so we get these different aspects of the Veda: Shiksha, Kalpa, Vyakaran, Niruk, Chan, Jyotish, Yoga, Karma Mimamsa, Vedanta, Nyaya, Vaisheshika, Samkhya, and all the Brahmanas, Upanishad, Aranyak, Itihas, Puran, Smriti, the Pratishakyas. We have, of course, Gandharva Veda, Dhanur Veda, Sthapatya Veda, Ayurveda. All of these values are different aspects of natural law. Of course, on top of them, there are the Samhitas, Rig Veda, Sama Veda, Yajur Veda, and Atharva Veda, that are described by Maharishi and organized according to their different predominant values. And suffice it to say for this that they are all complementary, because there has been sometimes a misunderstanding that this branch of the Veda is different than that branch, therefore it contradicts that branch in a way, therefore I belong to this branch, I don't belong to that branch. And in reality, it is like the different forces of nature that work together to create wholeness. You need enough water to get the seed to grow and take the nutrients from the field, from the ground. But you need enough air and oxygen. You need enough sun and warmth and heat. And so in balance, all these different values, they create perfect ability for the seed to grow and become a beautiful tree. So if you put too much water, then it might rot. If you put too much sun, it might be burned. If you put too much wind, it might dry. But if you balance them, then they grow in perfection. And that's what the Veda tells us, that's what Maharishi has taught us, and that's what I proud and from being his disciple, proud to be with all of you and proud to share with you this knowledge of infinity of life that is different, yet in balance it can create great progress. And that is the field of where we will find peace. Where will peace come? Peace will not come by eliminating differences. It will come by allowing differences to be coordinated and to work together so that they create waves and steps of progress and evolution. So that is part of the science of Veda, part of the science and technology of Veda. If we focus on, for example, yoga, as we have also heard, what is yoga? Yoga is a science that gives us supreme ability, ultimately, to go back to the essence of who we are, to go back to the self, which is the source of everything. And acting from that source, which creates the entire universe and maintain it in perfect order, we are acting from the level of unity that unifies us not only with our fellow human beings, it unifies us also with the planets, with the stars, with the trees, with the animals. So there is that underlying shanti, that underlying peace that comes from non-duality, the non-duality of the self. And that is not only on the level of thinking, on the level of analyzing it or emotionally trying to fit in it, which although the mind, the intellect are important, but this comes from direct experience of transcending. Transcending means going beyond differences, going beyond the surface value and going to the real value. The real value is that unbounded, pure Satchit Ananda, which we all are, and which everyone is. And so when you are that and you experience that and you know that by direct experience within yourself, then you find no problem with anything, no fighting needed, no effect to create as a contradiction or aggression with anything, because you are at peace with yourself. Everything is yourself. And that is very real. And how does it happen? It happens in a simple way, in an innocent way, because the mind's tendency is to want more happiness, more growth, more bliss, more knowledge. And more than the most is within us, is who we really are in the depths of ourselves. And that is what yoga gives us. So in yoga, we have, even the first definition of yoga by Patanjali, Atha Yoganuशासनम, says, now I'll tell you about yoga. And what is yoga? Yoga chitta vritti nirodha. Yoga is the settling of the mind, the settling of the activities of the surface level, which are the vibrations on the surface level. And that is what transcendental meditation does. It takes us to that level, and with its advanced technique, we can act from this level and create the effect that we have heard is Tat Sanidhau Vairatyagaha, which means in the vicinity of the coherence, in the vicinity of yoga, everything calms down. And that's what the research has shown. When people practice transcendental meditation and the advanced siddhi programs, they settle down, they are in shanti, they are in peace, and ultimately also they create a coherence which leads the entire society to become peaceful. And this again is not just a theory, it is a beautiful knowledge from the Veda, and it has been proven scientifically. Because to say that the Veda is scientific, it means we have to verify it according to the scientific method, which requires a systematic approach that is repeatable and reliable. Systematic means you do the same thing and then it's repeatable, you can repeat it, it's not just one time it happens, and it's reliable, it produces the effect. So whether it's a chemical reaction or a spiritual undertaking or a spiritual transcending value, when you do it, you get the results, you repeat it, you get the same results. And that's what we have been doing over and over again on thousands of situations and hundreds of people, thousands of people. And in different parts of the world, it has been proven that when people practice this program together, as Maharishi predicted, then the conflicts are reduced, as we have heard from Dr. Alvarez briefly. That is scientific. That is why Veda is scientific in its knowledge and also in its technology, in its methods, in terms of world peace, but also in other terms, of course, for Ayurveda, for all the other aspects of the Veda. Now, how can we dig deeper into what Veda is really? And to say that what is it really Veda? And that takes us to also something that Veda says, which is mantra brahmanayor vedanam dheyam. which means what we call Veda, what is being called Veda, is two things, mantra and Brahmana. And Maharishi explains mantra is the sound, is the expression, and Brahmana is the mechanics of transformation of one sound into the other, into the other. Like we said, when we have an observation of a seed becoming a tree, then you see the seed developing, that's an observation, that's the manifestation. But what makes the seed change and grow and gather the nutrients and build up a tree and become a big tree and create new seeds? These are the laws of nature, the mechanics of transformation that are hidden because you don't see them through the senses, but they are very active. These are the laws of nature. So Veda is total knowledge. If Veda is total knowledge, Maharishi says, then it's not enough that it is something theoretical, but also its own structure must reflect the structure of the dynamics of the laws of nature. The structure of the dynamics of the laws of nature. What does it mean? You know, to fulfill a function, you have to have a structure. If you want a plane to fly, you cannot just take a car and make it run very fast. You can make it run as fast as you like, it will not fly. What you need is a structure, the wings that interact with the laws of nature, that interact with the wings interacting with the wind and with the speed. Then there is a certain curvature of the wing and how does it take the wind, and then there is a lift power. So there is a structure to perform a function. If you want a microscope, you don't get a knife, or you don't get a car, or you build something that has a structure so that the structure fulfills the function. Now, the structure of Veda, therefore, Maharishi has thought and has said, since it is that which creates wholeness, which creates fullness, that which knows all the laws of nature, must be perfect. And so he looked at the structure and he found how these different values of the Veda actually interact with each other, which means basically simple sound and silence, paragraphs, number of richas, number of padas, number of suktas, number of mandalas. Why is it that many? Why so many, not less, not more? And therefore, the structure even of the Veda, independent of the function of it, really, is what is needed to create the function. So it's not independent of the function in terms of that is not correlated. It is absolutely correlated. Every structure has a function. And the function of total knowledge is to take us to that Ananda, that Satchit Ananda, which is within us. And so Maharishi thought all the Veda must have the structure that is perfect. Now, how can we judge that? It is very subjective. It's a feeling. How can we convince the world that this is actually real, rather than another imagination, another thinking, another somebody thinking in one way or the other? So Maharishi said there is a simple equation. We know that human beings can transcend, so they can experience pure consciousness. We know it from our own experience. We know it from the experience of the rishis, of all those who have been practicing transcendental meditation. And therefore, the human physiology as a structure is able to transcend, is able to experience wholeness, is able to experience totality. That means the human physiology has a structure that is befitting, that is if you like, the incarnation of total natural law. It has within it all that is needed to experience fullness, to experience perfection. And of course, many have said that in a sense, in the Bible, it is said that humans are created in the image of God. in the Veda, aham Vedoham, I am the Veda, so I am totality, I am knowledge, I am wholeness. Yat hapinde, tatha brahmande, as is the atom, so is the cosmos, so is the universe. There is that correlation. And therefore, within us is, of course, we know the unified field already, but what we are having more than that is that we can actually experience it. We can actually live it. And that is what brings moksha, what brings enlightenment, what brings shanti and peace in society. Because people who experience this create a coherence. That coherence has an entrainment effect. Even those who don't practice it now start aligning. And that's what the research has shown, that it's not necessary for everyone to meditate. It's enough for 1% of the people to meditate, or for the square root of 1% to practice the advanced techniques of the siddhis, the advanced siddhis flying and yogic flying techniques. And we have shown that it creates the effect socially and everywhere. So to come back to our last point, the human physiology is described by all the various wise teachings. You know, in the Islamic tradition also, the Imam Ali, who says, consider yourself like you are an atom in which the whole universe is folded. Again, total natural law is within you. And in the Quran, it says, I am closer. God says to his people, I am closer to you than your jugular vein. So if you look at Taoism, at Buddhism, you look at the different cultures, they all point in that direction. So Maharishi said, this is not just a philosophy, it's a real thing. So he asked me to research the relationship between Veda and the structure of the human physiology, meaning the structure and function of Veda with the structure and function of the human physiology. And that will be hopefully another webinar where we have found in an amazing way, as I looked into it deeply, for every aspect of the Veda, from Rig, Sama, Yajur, Atharva, Shiksha, Kalpa, Vyakara, Niruk, Chan, Jyotish, Nyaya, Vaisheshika, Samkhya, Yoga, Karma, Mimamsa, Vedanta, all of the aspects of the Veda have a structure, which means, for example, the yoga book of Patanjali has 4 chapters. Each chapter has a number of sutras. And these sutras, you know, have a function. And it corresponds to the unifying value, because the yoga means to unify, to put things together, to create coherence and wholeness. And in the brain, there is a place which unifies. This is the association fibers that run from one side of the brain to the other, front and back. And as you look at the structure of yoga, you look at the structure of the brain, you find they're exactly the same. The same 4 chapters are in the nervous system and the brain. The same number of sutras and divisions and subdivisions are in the structures of the nervous system. And you find this in every other aspect. This is just one example. So Veda is then the same as human physiology. Our human body is a replica on a more expressed level, on a more gross level, of the dynamics of the Veda. So Veda is true science, and there is in it the technology of how to achieve fulfillment, go back to the self. And we see this happening. For example, when people transcend, their brain coherence rises. The front, back, right, and left work together in a coherent way, indicating that the yoga value, the samadhi is transcendence, the samadhi is there. What happens physiologically? There is a physiological response on the brain level and on the entire balance, organizational level of the whole physiology. So it creates peace for the individual because there is no disturbance, because disease is something that is not working in accordance with this natural law. So the body starts working in accordance with natural law. That's why we see better health, better performance, better students have better grades at school, they are more peaceful, better relationship with others, and hundreds of scientific research studies. create peace in the individual. And as this peace is created in a small percentage of the society, we have seen decrease in violence, decrease in conflict, decrease even in hospital admission, decrease in accidents of the road, and all indicators of society growing towards greater fulfillment, more happiness, more shanti, more peace, happen through the technologies of the Veda, which in this case is the direct technology of samadhi, experiencing samadhi in a natural, simple way through transcendental meditation. So indeed, Veda is a science, Veda is a technology, and we are the Veda, and it's not just a philosophy. It has beautiful teachings and beautiful philosophical thinking, but it is a science, which means everyone is Veda. We are grateful to the Vedic tradition of India, to the great Pandits and those who have been passing the Veda from generation to generation to create that maintenance of the value of the Veda. So that is on the level of transcending. There is another level of the Veda which is very powerful, and that is because it is the dynamics of natural law. If you chant it from that level, just on the level of the vibration, you are transcending, and you can chant the Veda, or you can experience the vibrations of the sounds of the Veda from that level. Then you can change things and prevent all occurrences that might be difficult, even those that can be coming from the planetary changes, the environmental changes, the cycles of nature. And that is the program of Yagya. So Yoga and Yagya are great powers besides all the others like Ayurveda and Sthapatya Veda that we have mentioned, and all the other values. And the sounds of the Veda rebalance our physiology, create health and wholeness for the individual, invincibility and peace for society. So all glory to Veda, and all glory to all those who support Veda as a science, and they really can take it, whatever religion they are, whatever belief system they have, whatever traditions and cultures they have. Veda is a science. It's a science of consciousness. It's a science that allows us to act from the unified field of natural law, and therefore it applies for all people and for all societies, for the entire environment, and for the creation of peace and happiness in our dear world. Thank you again for inviting me. It's really a joy, and let's hope we can meet again and do something very practical about it. Namaskar and Jai Gurudev.
Thank you. Although I believe that we can't thank you enough, Professor Nader. Let me just submit